what's hard about teaching a class like this is like the whole theory part, like talking about why you need this and how you should do this. And it doesn't really, to me, make sense and click in your head until after you go and shoot something and edit it. And so that's kind of why, you know, we do all these little projects and have all this, the first month, this whole bunch of information slapped at you. And then when you guys do your first real project, the point of it is you are going to make mistakes, because this is where the aha moment's going to be. So if you were there when all the coverage happens, like I could easily say, hey, when we get into editing, I'll just give you some shots, footage to use, and just edit that footage. And that may help you be a better editor, but it's not going to help you be a better filmmaker. So if I have you guys shoot your own projects and then edit them, and then you're like, oh my goodness, why didn't I get this? Why didn't I do that? And you see all the mistakes you made. You now realize how what you shoot on location, on set, affects what happens in post. And then all that, and then it comes back to development, how much pre-production you did for everything. So it's like a long process where there's a lot of me sitting here lecturing and talking, but I think in the end, it pays off. I think everybody, specifically when they get to the final project, that everybody's like really learns better by doing than just sitting here and looking at bad examples and stuff. So that's my whole philosophy on this class, and why, you know, so some, like today, there's a lot of information here. All this information is in Canvas. So I kind of transcribed it there so that you can kind of go back and look at it. The examples will be there, but these are important things. That this whole idea of coverage is super important in filmmaking, getting it right and understanding the mechanics behind it. Because if you don't understand this part of it, it just sets you up for failure down the road. If I don't do, like we're going to talk about now, triangle coverage, and don't do it properly, then it will reflect in the edit. And when we do simple things like we're talking about now, it's pretty easy. But this world of coverage gets incredibly complex. In fact, it's exponentially complex when we move into bigger and bigger scenes. So imagine doing a massive battle. Think Lord of the Rings, when they have these big, huge battles with hundreds of people. Keeping the coverage on that dialed in, keeping the continuity straightened out, that is a massive undertaking that takes a really, really experienced filmmakers to get a handle on. So here we're starting at the very beginning. And so these concepts still kind of apply, no matter how you scale up whatever you're doing. So let's talk about this whole idea of triangle coverage. So I'm going to say up front that that this is going to be basic coverage. This is 101. This is in fact, sometimes we call this TV coverage, right? This doesn't mean every movie's done this way, but when you break down most coverage, most TV episodics or motion pictures, you will find some form of triangle coverage there. Usually more elaborate than what I'm going to show you, but it's a basic way of getting coverage that works in the edit. So what we mean by triangle coverage is we're going to use basic coverage using the master shot and 2 singles. So if we look at camera B right here, it's a master shot. We've got 2 people. Here's my 2 people sitting at a table. Here's that shot. Now I'm going to go to camera A. Camera A is her close-up. Camera C is his close-up. Notice that it forms a little triangle here, right? Now, let's see what else. So this is basically a great foundation to build around and create a better visual story. Like if you're not sure in the beginning, you're still trying to figure out coverage and how to do everything, you could get by with triangle coverage pretty easy and follow this and get the coverage that you need to tell any story. Let me go back again. Sorry, jumped the gun. So what this means is we're going to draw an imaginary line between our 2 subjects here. And this is going to be called the 180-degree line. And we're going to shoot everything on one side of that line. And I'm going to explain why that's important right now. So this is one of the most important rules to remember in filmmaking. Anybody here know what it is? Anybody heard of it?
The 180-degree rule? Yeah, I've heard of it.
What's the big deal, you know?
To not jump across the line.
What does that do?
It makes your scene look like it kind of got mirror flipped.
There you go.
My favorite.
Bravo.
It That's what happens in The Shining in the bathroom, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe you're correct. So 180-degree rule. Now remember, just like I've said in the past, these rules can be broken once you know how they work and when and why to break them. And so people break them, like Stanley Kubrick. Lots of times people break these rules, but they break them for reasons, not just disregarding them for the sake of disregarding them. So for us, we're going to keep track of these rules because they're really important for us to make our edit work. So what this states is that two characters in a scene should maintain the same left-right relationship to one another. And this imaginary line called the axis connects the characters, and by keeping the cameras on one side of this axis for every shot in the scene, we'll keep continuity in our edit. If I cross the axis, is what's called crossing the line, and this will create problems during the edit. So what does this kind of look like? So basically, once I know this rule, I can always find creative ways to break it up, and there's reasons to do it. When I cross the line, I'm going to flip one side, and it's going to be confusing for the audience. And so unless I'm intentionally trying to confuse the audience, I try not to break the 180-degree rule. Now, it does happen occasionally. And so you'll see movies where they do break the 180-degree rule, and you might not even notice it, and that's okay. So they got away with it. There's other times that if you broke it, it may not work, and it's definitely a mistake. So let's see how this works. So these two people are having a conversation. Here's camera one, right? The two shot. She's on the left, he's on the right. Camera two here is over the shoulder. He's on the right, she's on the left. Notice he's on the right in this shot, she's on the left here. Everybody's the same. If I go to camera three over his shoulder, she's on the left, he's on the right. So when I cut from this shot to this shot to this shot, everybody's on the right side of the frame that they belong. But if I cross the line here, and here's camera X, notice now when I shoot this, she is on the right, he is on the left. So if I cut this shot with this shot, they magically flip-flop sides. Everybody see that? So that becomes confusing for the audience. And it's a distraction, specific, you see this in talk shows and news, they all use this, triangle coverage. What I'm trying to do is between angles, even if I don't use this two shot, I just use this shot and this shot, I want them to be on the right sides of the frame and flip flop. So I don't want flip flopping here. So if I cut from this one here, oh man, why did I do that? If I cut from here to here, notice he is on the right side, she is on the left. If I cut from here to here, she's on the left here, and then she magically flips on to the right here. So it's a really simple rule, but it can be very complicated at some points. So how do you keep track of this? Well, I'm just going to draw a line between these two people. Whoever's interacting with each other, I'm going to make an imaginary line. I'm not going to put the camera on. I'm going to keep the cameras on either side. I can put them both here. I can put them both here. Doesn't matter. But I'm not going to cross the line. It's like Ghostbusters. Don't cross the streams, right? Because you'll have a problem of continuity. And you're like, well, why don't we just, if I do that, I can just flip it in post, right? Just flip the shot. No, you can't. Because if you do flip it, you're going to get something weird going on because people's faces look different when you reverse them. Half of your face is not the same as the other half. Not to mention, what if I'm wearing a shirt that has words on it or something, it's all going to reverse and look like and obviously going to see it. And if you look at old movies and movies where people have made these mistakes or independent movies, you can catch that once in a while where they flip something because they made a mistake. So keeping to one side of the 180-degree rule is fairly important. Yeah, it's a super important rule. And here's the kicker, man. It's really easy with two people to set the rules but what happens if you've got six people around a table having a conversation? Where's the line?
Harder, right? I mean, it's kind of like how I recognize the one like we had them sit at the table. It's kind of like how they do it for Seinfeld, for Friends, for How I Met Your Mother. they all
Mhm.
had the same kind of talking at a table. But if the table was like 360, I wouldn't know.
Well, the line shifts, it constantly shifts. So you have to keep track of it. So, it's pretty easy to kind of do, well, I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it's doable in narrative. But what if you're shooting a documentary and you're doing this all on the fly? So I've done that a lot. I've done TV shows, documentaries where we've got 8 people having a conversation, and we don't know where the conversation is going because it's all happening in real time. And so me and another camera operator are working together, and we are constantly adjusting the line as it happens. So it may be here, and then it suddenly shifts this way. So we have to reshift as we're shooting and shift back. So there's a lot of like keeping track of everything in your head. And there's certainly some tools that we can use to do that. So let's talk about basic rules of movement first. So this rule really shows how important camera positioning is when getting coverage. I need to really be specific about this stuff. I don't want to cross the line. My goal here is to paint the picture of the environment for the audience just as much as the characters in the scene. So the wide shot might set up the environment, the reaction close-up reaction shots. I'm just trying to establish everything here, but I'm trying to do it within the rules of the line. The line could change, right? Right now, imagine there's the line is between you two, right? I've got you guys and me, and I've got the camera on this side doing coverage. But if I get up and walk over here, somewhere here, well, the line used to be this way. Now the line's going this way. But if my cameras are all over here, it's still the same. But if I got 3 people going on, well, now the line starts shifting constantly. And I need to find a way to keep track of all that. So this is where storyboards can help out a lot. This is where shot diagrams can help a lot. Where I actually draw stick figures on a bird's eye view of everything. Actually, today we can use software to do it. And I'll show you that. So it's real, but the miss is if I don't keep track of this line, I have a hard time in the edit. So the 180-degree rule is what helps us understand character positioning in the scene and the relationships to each other. Because if I have the 2 shot here, and then as I cut to these shots that are crossing the line, my characters flip around, my audience gets confused, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels like a jump cut. It feels like a mistake. Now, sometimes you can do this, right? If you're doing a movie where you're trying to confuse, what if you're doing a dream sequence, right? Where things shouldn't feel normal. Well, jump cuts and jumping the line may be a cool thing to do because it helps confuse the audience. But if I'm not trying to do something like that, I don't want to confuse the audience. Because the more I make them confused, the more they break them out of the emotional, the connection with the story, then the more they're like, oh, what's going on in this movie? It doesn't feel right. Then suddenly, boom, I've lost them. So how do I get around this? If I want to cross the line, I can do it, but I need to show the audience that I'm doing it. So what that means is, let's just say, for example, I've got this shot here, and I've got someone here, and this is the original shot, but I want to cross the line because I want to start shooting on this side. Well, if I just cut to this camera here, it's going to be a jump cut. But what if I have this camera here and I'm on a dolly and I truck over to here and show the audience I just crossed the line? Now I've crossed the line. The audience knows I crossed the line. Now I can move these cameras and cut everything on this side if I wanted to. So you see a lot of movies, they do that. They'll cross the line, but they'll show you crossing the line. And once they cross the line, the audience sees it, it kind of works. So when I do this, it can be, sometimes it's known as a reverse angle, where I'm reversing it. So I'm sorry, if I don't show them crossing the line, it's a reverse angle that can confuse them. So if I show my audience the line being crossed, it takes away that confusion. And it's okay, like your audience is gonna go, oh wait, they just crossed the 180-degree line, it's a mistake. They're not gonna see that, they're gonna feel something doesn't cut right. This is a piece of software called FrameForge. Anybody ever heard of this? This is a fairly high-end shot designing software that allows me to build pretty complicated storyboards. I can block out scenes. I can pre-visualize just about anything in a movie. And this is amazing. I've used this for a couple years on a couple projects, and it's a very powerful tool. Unfortunately, it's fairly expensive. To get the full-blown version, it's about $600–700. But what it gets you is the ability to build sets, have characters, and pre-visualize pretty much anything in your movie without having a crew or a camera. And in fact, the lenses that you pick, the cameras that you pick are very accurate. In fact, they're going to give you the exact depth of fields, the exact point of view, and everything that you would get from a real camera. So if I frame these shots up in here, and I'm using a red camera with a certain 50mm lens, that's exactly what it's going to look like for real. So this is a pretty powerful tool that a lot of companies use to help pre-visualize when they're really that elaborately designing scenes. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail down the road when we start talking about storyboarding. But I kind of use it here to kind of set an example. So I've got a couple cameras. I got this camera. I've got 3 cameras here that give me points of view. And every time I clip on a camera, you could see it right here, right? And then I've got this one right here. So right now, if I cut from here to here to here, everything feels right? But if I grab this guy, put him over there, it's wrong, right? So how do I get from here to here without making it a reverse angle that becomes a pain in the neck? Well, I'll show you. So I'm gonna straighten that angle out for a second. So if I, again, start off here, and again, I'm looking at this shot right here. And if I dolly the camera over the line, and I can't do it too well here, but I'm going to pan it real quick. Just by doing that little move like that and showing the audience that, we just changed our point of view, our perspective of where our frames are. And now I can grab this camera, reverse it, put it over here, and flip this camera, and now I can cross the line. Now, you may not do that here on a simple 2 people talking to each other, but I have a scene where, do actors normally just stand still all the time? No, they're moving. So I could block out movements and stuff here and figure out exactly where I need to put my camera angles. Now, this is really useful, again, for doing storyboards. It can make some pretty elaborate storyboards, and I'm not going to dive into it right now. I'm going to show you guys a little bit later when I'll show you some examples of storyboards I've made with this software and see how elaborate they actually can be. But there's one way of working. So if you don't have the $600 or $700, and I think you can get a student version for like $300, which is not a bad deal. You can use some other types of software. So I have another one here that I use. This one's a little more affordable. This is called Shot Designer. I think this is like $20 to get. You got to download it, and then you can get the pro version. This is a great tool, and in fact, this works on a computer, a tablet, or a phone. So I actually have it on my phone too that I can use, and actually, that's the best place it works, is on the phone, because you can just drag everything around. But with this Shot Designer, I can create scenes and block out movement. So here we go. I've got a table here. Each one of these blobs represents a character, right? So I could drag cameras around here and find coverage. It's not going to show me a preview of what that camera is showing, but it could show me, here's my line. I've got 2 cameras here. So I know that when these 2 people are talking, these 2 cameras are going to work and become, they're all going to be on the right side of the line because the line's right here, right? But what happens when this person starts talking to this person and they turn? Okay, well, now they're looking at each other. Now these 2 cameras, this camera is on one side of the line, can face that character, but I can't use this camera anymore because now the line is here. I've crossed it. So now either I move this camera or I have another camera there having that conversation. Now, same thing happens when these 2 people look at each other, like that and that. Well, this, I keep hitting wrong. This camera can slide over here and start shooting that way, but this camera, if I turn it, look, I'm on the wrong side of the line here, right? So now I've got to take another, either take this camera, move it over here, or take this camera and move it over here and keep the line going. And I'm trying to stay as much as possible on this side of the line between things, because I've got a wide shot here that covers all this. And if I can keep it all on these sides of the line, it'll cut with this camera. So this is a great tool for it. And it's way more details than this. I can have some fairly elaborate stuff. In fact, maybe I'll see if I can dig one up. I'll maybe show when we talk more about blocking, but I can lay out action for all these characters and figure out exactly what they're doing. So let me see if I can call up one for a second. Open a scene. Yeah, I'm just going to take ownership. Okay, so here's an actual scene that I blocked out for a real scene in a pilot TV show that I shot. So here you could see these balls represent my characters. They're sitting at a table, and you can see where I've blocked out the characters that they actually move. And here you could see where some cameras move around. Now down here, and this is what's cool about this, is that I can click here. That shows me my first setup. I can break this down as setups. I can go, so if I start on my first setup, well, I've got Dottie here, and I've got a camera, my shot 8, which is right down here, is a medium shot, dolly back up right here. So if I jump to the next setup point, you can see where my camera backed up with my character there, and I just created blocking. Here's where I'm learning to block characters. Now, once it goes here, now I've got one camera here, this camera shooting dodge, another, this is my master shot right here covering the whole scene. So from this angle, I've got 3 shots. I've got dodge, Dottie, 2 shot, dodge, medium close up, dodge, medium shot. I cut to here, the third one. She turns that way. Well, now I've got, this is her shot when these two talk, and now this camera is going to get Guy's shot. Cut back again, she walks out. Now my cameras change again. She comes back in, there's another moment, and then she finally leaves. So this software doesn't visually show me anything like what the cameras do, but it's a way I can look at where my cameras are placed and figure out exactly where the lines are and figure out exactly how I do my coverage if I'm trying to block a more complicated scene. And this one's not that complicated. The most complicated thing was this little Dottie here running around, right? So she goes from, from there, the camera moves down, and we blocked it out with the actor, figuring everything out. She's going to be there. Then at some point she's going to turn. She's going to turn, and now this camera is going to pick her up. And this doesn't mean I've got this many shots, cameras happening at once. This is showing me where I'm going to put my single camera that I use. I only did this all with one camera, where I'm going to put my camera for each shot. And if I look over here, as I make this stuff, it helps me create a shot list. So once I block this whole thing out with this piece of software, it'll help me make a list that I can see. So my first shot, and this is the order I was going to shoot. My first shot, long shot master, right? And there I've got some more information about what it is, but here's my first shot right here. Second shot, medium long shot. So it's a little bit tighter. Third shot, well, now I'm going to shoot these 3 shots from this setup. I've got Dodge and Dottie right here, right? So I got Dodge here, Dottie here when she comes over here. I've got those 2 angles. And then I've got another shot here, Dodge's medium shot from this setup right here. When I go to the next setup, well, that's an insert shot. So I'm shooting a close-up of a funny poster. And from there, I'm going to go back to Guy's shots. So I'm reversing the angle there. In fact, let me just close these out, some of these out. And when I get here, now I'm going to an insert shot of more posters. And then now I'm going back to Dottie at the doorway. And then finally, this dolly shot that I showed you here, that's the shot I'm doing last. And then finally after that, well, I've got some insert shots of some stuff on the wall that I'm going to shoot. So these shots were, I rearranged them in what order I wanted, but when I sat down with the director, we looked at the script, we came up with a brief shot list of what we wanted to do in that scene. And then I used this software and sat down with him and said, well, what's Dottie going to do? She's the one moving around. She's going to come out here and say a line. She's going to walk away. She's going to come back again to her son, Dodge, give him some food, say a line, walk away. Then she's going to come back again and say something and walk away. So by using the software, I was able to block what she's doing out. And these two characters are sitting right here. You can see I drew a line here. There's my 180-degree line. But I can drop these camera placements in here, and now I have a visual view of all my shots and seeing exactly what they're doing and having a better understanding of what my coverage is. Does it make sense, or I just overloaded everybody?
It
Makes sense.
sense.
Does each person in a scene usually have a camera following them?
No, it all depends. We just wanted something with her. I try to do coverage based on this. This scene was based on what we had access to. So the one shot was a slider shot. I had a slider that I could use. The rest of them, we didn't have the budget for a crane or a steady cam or anything like that. So all of it's tripod or hi-hat. And so because of that decision, we're like, well, we just have to have multiple angles, and it's a comedy. So that meant that a lot of the timing I had to do in the edit. I had to have enough coverage to get everybody's reaction so that the editor could edit it to what the funny punchlines in the comedy is. So there's a lot of setups here. So if you look at this, I've got 9 setups for this scene. It's a lot of setups, right? But it was a long scene. Let me see if I can find another scene to show you that might not be open a scene. Let's do this one. Okay, here's another one. So here's a scene in a psychiatric office. 2 characters, one character lying on the couch, and then the doctor at her desk right here. So same thing here. I've got, multiple shots happening here. Or you're not showing me. Oh, I got to click on one. So first shot, it's going to be whip pan to Dr. Hand. So we open up the scene here where camera whips to her. Then I've got the master shot right on here, showing the wide shot of both them sitting here. Then I've got guys over the shoulder shot. So OTS is over the shoulder. So we're over her shoulder looking back at Guy who's lying on the couch here. Whip pan, I already talked about that one. Then a medium close-up of Dr. Hand. And then also a close-up dolly. There's a line where she says something and the camera trucks into her face. So we get 2 angles there. Then finally, over the shoulder of Guy looking at Dr. Hand. So if you notice here, here's the wall, here's the couch. The camera is outside the wall. So what we had to do is slide the couch further, get the camera back there, and still shoot over back at the doctor. And once we got that done, we got a high angle looking straight down on him lying down. So here's 2 people having a conversation, no real action happening. And then we look at it, 6 setups to do that. So you start seeing now the importance of how many setups I need to do to get a scene properly. And grant you, we were doing a pilot, and did we overshoot this? Maybe not really. Actually, I think we actually were pretty conservative on the amount of shots we were selecting to do. But all this came from pre-production. So this all came from reading the script, breaking down some of the shot ideas we want, finding the locations and going there and figuring out what the actual dimensions of the locations were, what they were going to be like. So we went and scouted these locations and knew where they were. And I was able to actually measure them out and drew a map. So I knew exactly how big it was going to be and what I could do there. Let me see if I can find one more. Okay, here's a pretty simple one. So here we go. Here we have just 4 shots, 2 people sitting at a park bench. Guy and his friend dodge. So guy comes in, sits down. I've got a little girl who crosses in front of the shot. So we have here a dolly shot. So first one's going to be extreme ECU to medium shot. So extreme close up on dodge, and the camera pulls back to reveal the two shot. Second one's going to be dodge, it's close up. Third one is going to be guys close up. Notice they're on the side because these two are going to turn and look at each other. So instead of having the shots here, I'm going to have them off to the angles here to get coverage. And then finally, my long shot. So this is we're thinking about these two shots, maybe subjective, right? Because they're over the shoulder right in there. This one is definitely subjective. But this one, long shot, far back, compressed shot, showing like the removed. That's our objective shot. So I'm not saying that you guys need to do this for your projects here, but all I'm saying is that this is the norm. This is like, if I was actually going to sit down, and this was, an independent, low budget project that I worked on, and this is the level that I worked at for that. Blocking stuff out. By blocking it out and trying to visualize stuff in front of me, it helps me figure out where the lines are, what the coverage I need to cover, what action's happening. So do you need to have this piece of software? No. Can you do it on a piece of paper on your notebook? Sure can. Sometimes when we're shooting and we're trying to refigure out a scene that doesn't work, I don't have time to grab a computer and do this. We're just going to grab a piece of paper and draw it out and go, okay, what if we start here and go this and put one camera here, one camera this way, and then what if we come around and put a camera here? Anything to kind of visually communicate with everybody is what's key here. If I just say, yeah, I got it in my head and that's all I'm doing, yeah, I might be good at that, but if I'm not communicating to my crew, I'm not giving them any chance to win. If I'm just sitting there, or if the director's like, don't worry, I know what it is, I'll just tell you where to put the camera. Well, guess what? That doesn't help us be proactive. That doesn't help us pre-light. Doesn't help us do anything. But if I create these little shooting diagrams, whether computerized or just sketch them out on paper, and I show everybody, this is what we're doing. It's pretty easy to see. It's pretty, and not to mention, if I'm in the middle of shooting and I'm like, suddenly, wait, we're at shot one, we're on scene, we're on shot 3. Oh, no, 1. We're on shot 1, ECU to MC. What the heck was that? And then I can look here and go, oh yeah, I remember. I start on that close up of something on his shirt and I pull back to reveal. That's what's going on there. I don't have to kind of run through my brain to figure that out. It's on a piece of paper here. It's in front of me. So maybe you're seeing it now, maybe not, but starting to realize the importance of pre-production, of really planning it. And you're like, hey, well, what about documentary work? What about reality TV? We do this stuff, not this elaborate, but I will tell you that, even on documentary work where I don't know where the character is going to go, I might know where they're going to be in a scene. We might say, okay, we're having our, our two main people going to meet inside this kitchen and have a conversation. Okay, great. So where are we going to put the cameras? Well, are they going to come from over there? Okay, so let's make a game plan where the cameras are going to go, knowing that whatever they do is what they do. So if we say they're going to come here, but they end up coming over here, well, we're going to adjust our schedule, our plan, whatever, our shot diagrams to go over there. So when the documentary reality world, it's more off the cuff, it's more on the fly, but which means it can be more difficult to deal with, but it also means it's going to be sloppier. And that's why it is sloppier. It's why it looks sloppier. That's why when you watch a great, narrative show, pick your favorite TV show you like to watch, it looks pretty polished and looks pretty tight because somebody somewhere is doing this stuff, figuring this all out ahead of time so that we get there. I don't have to think about this. All these scenes that I spent all this extra time pre-visualizing meant that when we were on set, I didn't have to sit there and fantasize about what to shoot. It was there. I was done. I just got to do my game plan that I made. Is there room for improvising? Absolutely. Plenty of room. In fact, I'll show you one last one. If I go to open scene, back patio. So here's a fairly complicated scene. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 shots. Like our A scenes, like this would be an A scene, 9 shots to get it. 9 setups. I'm sorry, not shots, setups. You know, got a camera following someone in from a grill. Here's a grill. Someone flips a burger, goes back, turns around, has another conversation. Here, I put another camera up so I have cross coverage right here. Camera turns over there, turns back to the mother having a conversation, back to the son having a conversation, back to father. He comes back to say a line, camera trucks in, follows over there to have a conversation with son. Then he goes back to the grill. So all this stuff, we blocked all these shots out. And then that day we were shooting outside and we had a scene before this, and the gardeners were running next door, and they were doing their deal with the lawnmowers and everything, and we couldn't shoot. Tried to get them to leave. They're not going to leave, and we didn't have a couple $100 to pay them to go away. And that's what usually happens when you have gardeners. You throw them $200 and they'll go away, let you finish your scene. We didn't have that, so they weren't going to leave. So our whole schedule got jacked. And so when we got to this scene, we were running out of daylight. And so I had to, this was what we worked on. And instead I had to compromise and cut shots out that we knew we didn't have time to do. So a lot of these shots that were little dolly shots got thrown away. This coverage, this main shot, master shot, became the most important shot. And then I ended up really working these couple lenses here and had one other reverse shot here. But all the really cool moving shots out the door because of schedule. So even though I planned it all, the schedule got messed up because of the situation, and there's nothing I can do about it. So that doesn't mean that, well, we're just going to pick it up tomorrow. We couldn't. We had no way to. We had to shoot this scene this day, and that just meant compromising. So I like, all right, what do we got that we can salvage? Okay, what shots can we throw away and still work? That's kind of the mentality that you may have in this. So even though we threw it away, all the work that went into it was important because it made me understand the scene better. I knew what we could throw away and still get the scene done without worrying about screwing the editors that hard. So it's super critical to do some form of shot plan. The more complicated the scenery is, the movement of the actors, the more you have to block it out somehow, whether it's little drawings or software. And this also, to me, it's also independent of storyboards. So you could see that what may seem like, oh, I've got a little short, cute film here. I probably spent weeks preparing to get ready for it, because the more I prepare, the faster I'm going to work, the more efficient and the more success I'm going to have while I'm shooting. And that's the key. And we all try. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect and that this is what I do all the time. I don't. Certain things, when we shoot Ice Cold Blood, we don't do any of this. It's all happening on the fly because we've done so many episodes that we know exactly what type of shots we need, what it works. And I have such a short-term language with the director that we kind of know what we need. And we rely on a lot of improvising, but you're talking about a crew that's worked together for years who knows how to improvise together. So those things, it's all happening on the fly. Like we'll block out the scene right before we shoot it, or in the morning we'll block it out. But the director is relying a lot more on me, but he trusts me, and because we all work together so long that we all know each other. So there's an example where we don't have the budget to do this because we don't have the time to do this. They're not going to pay me a couple weeks of doing, shot designing and storyboarding for something. They're not going to do that. So I'm not going to do it. But it doesn't jeopardize the production because we know we've already figured it out what is needed. If I'm doing a short or something for a film festival, yeah, I'm definitely doing this. I'm definitely doing storyboards. Sometimes if it's really complicated, then the blocking, then I will definitely do this. Anytime I have any blocking that's out of the norm that I'm going to have to really think about, I will do something of this, whether it's in this software or I'm just going to draw it out. I know I kind of jumped the gun and went into that whole shot diagram thing, but I think that's important to kind of wrap in your head around because it helps you kind of see what we're talking about here about screen direction, the 180-degree line, and how to kind of prepare yourself for that. you're just doing simple people talking with each other and not doing a lot of movement, not that big of a deal. But you have multiple people, multiple movements, the actions changing direction all the time. You need to map it out a little bit so you're not getting lost in production. Because the worst thing in the world happens is when you cross the line or you screw up the coverage, and then the editor's like, man, we're screwed. Everything's not making sense. And you just don't want to be in that position, whether either a director or as a DP. So the more preparation you have, the more elaborate it is, the more preparation you need. The other thing I want to talk about too is screen direction. So this is going to refer to the concept of what they call cinematic grammar, which involves the direction of the characters are moving on the screen from the point of view of the camera audience. So if I look here, this is one shot, this is another shot. Here, she's going from left to right. And if I cut this shot with this shot, she should still be going left to right, right? So imagine the action crosses over the edit. Imagine this is the edit right here between two frames. She should be continuing the motion. So maintaining screen direction is critical if the film is to avoid confusion and keep the characters distinct. So I got two characters, running down a hallway, and they're going to collide, right? They're going to meet each other, right? We don't know that yet. So we got one character going from left to right, the other one going from right to left, right? So we see one angle, someone's running this way, cut to this one, someone else is running this way. They're getting closer and closer. I will need to keep them, when they go from shot to shot, keep going in the same direction so the audience knows, well, if one's going this way, one's going this way, they must be wanting to hit each other and collide. But if I have this shot, she starts first going left to right, and then I cut to the next shot of her, it's going from right to left, and it feels like she made a reverse and turned around. And if I intercut it with the other shot going the same direction, now suddenly they were heading towards each other, but then she turned around and now they're following each other. So screen direction is important. And again, you can break this rule, you can change it. People do it all the time. It just depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to confuse the audience, totally do it. If you are doing super jump cutty stuff and that's your style, well, then you can break it up a little bit. So what we're talking about is like kind of traditional, not old school, but like standard screen movement and coverage in theory, that once you get it wrapped in your head, you can totally break the rules if you want. So again, maintaining screen direction for the match cut. If the character exits from the right, she must enter the next frame from the left. So if she walks out of frame here, and I cut to the next shot, she should walk in from the same direction. So maintaining continuity with a change in direction. So if I want her to walk, she's walking from left to right, and I have a shot where I want her going right to left, I may have a shot where I see her make a turn in that shot, and I put that between shot A and shot C, and that helps our audience know that, boom, my person just turned around and went reverse. I can also get away with this doing something called a neutral shot, where instead of us being on one side of the line, the actor or she comes up right to the camera in the middle, and then I cut to one of these other reverses. I can go either direction. So instead of it being on this side going from left to right, instead of doing a turn like this, I could be straight looking down at her as she walks up to camera like this, and not past camera, but almost up to camera, and I can cut to a shot here where they're going the opposite way because that point of view was neutral. And I know that kind of sounds wacky right now. It's a lot easier to show in with an example, or to show in editing how that works. And we'll probably do some example of that later on. But my point here, just like crossing the line, if we're going to cross the line, we want to show it. Same thing here. If I'm going to reverse screen direction, I should show it to my audience. Doesn't mean it has to happen all the time, but if you keep that concept in your head, you can try for it, and sometimes you can get away with it without doing it. It works. A lot of times when there's montage editing where they mix a bunch of stuff happening together, if I parallel edit something between two different scenes, I can kind of change screen direction and it will all work. There's definitely different ways you can do it. Okay, so let's just start talking a little bit about blocking. We might have just enough time to squeeze in one example of blocking today. So basically blocking came from theater blocking. So blocking was originally a theater term that referred to the positioning and movement of the actors on stage for the purpose of telling a dramatic story point, right? So here's my stage, and I've got all this stuff around here. Here's my actors on the stage. Again, like we talked about before, in theater, the frame or point of view of the audience is the stage. It's set, it's unmoving, and the audience's perspective is also set and unmoving in their seat. So if I'm blocking for the theater, and this is how it all started back before there were movies, right? We all had theater. That's what everybody went for their entertainment. If my audience can't move, I should move my actors around, right? And block them around the set. So sometimes when somebody's saying something important, you see this in theater. If you go to a Broadway show or off Broadway in LA somewhere, the actors are having a conversation here, and then one actor is going to deliver like an important line or two. They're going to turn, step forward towards the audience and say it with their back to there and come to the audience. And this changes the perspective for the audience. It's like, oh, it's like coming to a close-up for my audience. So this whole idea of I'm going to block my actors out, I'm going to put them upstage and downstage and move them all around depending on who's saying what, became the basis for filmmaking, because we realized, oh, well, we should do this also for film. So in theater blocking, it's really just about moving the actors around, right? The stage doesn't change. Yeah, we can change the settings on the stage, but the physical stage never leaves. The audience, once they're in their seat, never changes a perspective. But for us in cinema, like I said before, we can move our actors around in a frame, but we have the ability to move the camera around too, as part of the blocking process. And so we need to think about the camera in this process. So unlike the theater, we change that perspective. I can go to a close-up, I can cut to a wide shot, I can truck in, I can dolly, I can crane, I can do all these shots we talked about last week and move the camera, change the audience's perspective. Every time I move the camera, I'm altering that audience perspective. What's the best way to do that? That's up to you as the filmmaker. But unlike theater, like I talked about before a little while ago, by editing is a form of camera movement. If I cut from a wide shot to a close-up, well, I just changed the perspective. I made a jump cut. I made an edit. I changed the audience on a fly, instant like that. That's the power, like I was talking about cinema. And unlike the theater has nothing like that. The actors physically walk up or walk away. Camera in our world allows us to have that ability. Camera and editing, I should say, gives us that ability. So many times this is the right choice. So if I wanted to, I could just use the camera and edit it. I can have a wide shot, cut to a close-up, cut to a medium shot, cut to a wide shot, and do all that. And that works. And a lot of movies do that. And a lot of low-budget movies, independent movies do that too. But that may be the right choice. But sometimes maybe that's not the right choice. Maybe it's more about, maybe I should not be editing the camera too much, and maybe I should be moving the camera or moving the actors more. So when we look at TV stuff, like we look at news or some situation comedies, everybody's basically stationary, right? They all kind of sit down around the table, they all kind of sit there and they deliver their lines and cut to close up, medium shot, close up, all that. And that works. And there's certain reasons why that's done in those genres. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later. But in filmmaking, that could get static. It can get kind of boring. So for us, we just think about how can we add movement? So we could block the camera and we also could block the actors. So, but doing one or the other, or even better, doing both can add to a technique to your cinematic language. It makes it more advanced. And this is where, if you really look at, if you want to see a good example of this being evolved throughout history in television, you can look at some of mid-70s TV where budgets were tight and a lot of stuff was just shot on a tripod with editing to take care of it. And then you cut to today. Do we see movement in our shots today on television? A lot, yeah,
Yeah.
because the technology's gotten better, and not just that, but our audiences demand it. If you're going to be paying $20 a month to Netflix, do you want the production quality to look good? You better be, right? But you better get your money's worth, right? I don't want to see any crap because I'm paying for it. So not only as the audience has demanded more in television, but the technology's gotten better. The filmmakers have taken more advantage of it. So we're all moving up. In bottom line here is that camera movement and actor blocking of camera and the actors is really important nowadays, regardless of where you're working, whether it's TV, streaming, feature films, documentaries, whatever. Even the documentary reality world, more gimbals, more drones, more any way to move the camera is being incorporated to up the ante of the quality production. So for us, blocking not only going to make it more interesting, all right, but it can add a deeper level of storytelling. And when I do that, it also includes these functions here. So what can blocking do? It can be to reveal. So if I want to reveal somebody, instead of just cutting to that person saying, oh, here's Bob. Who's the person? Who's the murderer? Cut to Bob. It's Bob. But instead, if I have a shot where I see someone strangling someone, I'm a close up on their hands, and I pull up and reveal as the person turns and suddenly I see who they are, that's a reveal for the audience. It's much more dramatic and much more interesting and better level of storytelling than just seeing someone choke someone and cut to them like, oh, it's Bob. I knew it all along. It was Bob. By revealing, it brings us in. It makes it more interactive. So revealing who it is can be important. So this means I'm visualizing internal emotion by having the character act out their feelings, wants, and desires. So I can reveal, like literally, like I just said, or I can use the camera to reveal what's going on inside their heads. So as they're getting ready to kill someone, I see the rage coming up. The camera can truck in more to bring that emphasis into us as the viewer. Blocking is consistent with how characters actually move. So this is an important thing too. I don't want to move the camera and block just for the sake of something. Like if I've got somebody and I'm blocking the actor around, I'm not going to be like, have someone every time they talk go, hey, see here, I want to talk about what's happening today. Okay, sit back down. My turn to talk again. Hey, I'm going to talk like that way. People don't do stuff like that for real, right? And I know I'm over exaggerating, I'm just doing it to show you, but when I'm blocking characters and actors and everything, and this can be, both the camera and both what the characters do, I want to make their movements feel realistic and natural. So if they are going to reveal like the moment, so let's say instead of the camera pulling back to reveal the murderer, Bob, we see over Bob's shoulder, the camera's actually stationary, and we're like, he's choking. And then when he's finally done, he just turns around and reveals himself to the camera. That's another way of visualizing internal emotion revealing. So I can do that, but whatever I do, I want it to feel natural and feel kind of what those real people would normally do. And so sometimes good directors and actors will go study, the characters they're playing and find some inspiration and see how those characters move and behave and act. And the blocking can become part of that. So also I want to find good reasons to force characters to reveal themselves in their movement. So again, I need to have the blocking to be believable. So just because I can block someone and move them around, I need to make sure it feels real. Do those people actually move like that? Does that type of character, would they do something like that? Are they passive? Do they sit and they're not as movement? Or are they more of an active, energetic person? These are things as a director, I would think about. I'm gonna stop here today. There was already a buttload of information. We're gonna have to pick this up next class because we've still got a bunch of stuff to talk about, and I don't want to get into some of these examples because it's gonna run out of time. So let's say we're gonna pause it here, and we're gonna pick it up on Monday, right? All right then. So you guys, hey, have a great weekend, right? It's Wednesday, right? We already made it through the week. Crazy.